Welcome to part 2 of 10 tips for new writers. I am Kalvin Ellis, and I'm a writer. Question 6. When to write? Well, just like the where to write, any damn time you want. Fun exercise. Pause this video. Yeah, pause it. You can come back to it, but pause it and write something. Here's a prompt for you, and I'm serious about this. If you're a writer, pause the video, come back to it, but pause it and take the next 5 minutes or less. Look to your immediate left. What is the thing sitting closest to you? Is it a cell phone? Mine is books. I've got books sitting immediately to my left, so I would grab a book. But whatever is immediately to the left of you, grab that item. Okay, now that you've got your item, make it sentient. This thing is alive. Whatever it is alive, and give it a purpose. If it's a book, the book is alive, and what is the motivation of that book? What does that book desire? So if you're doing this little book activity, story activity, if you stopped and you actually wrote something, send me a comment down below, or just post your little, if you're really daring, post your little thing in a comment, because it should be short, just a couple of minutes, but post it in there. Let us know what your little inanimate item that is now sentient and animated, what its hopes and dreams are. Post it down there, or message me and send it to me. I'd love to read it. Tip 7. Watching the world with a creative eye. So I am always looking at the world with a creative eye. I did an interview years ago when I did a Stephen King film. I was asked to do an interview, and the question was, what is your creative superpower? And my creative superpower, I decided, was creative superimposition. So everything I see, I try to figure out how that can work to tell a story, whatever that is. So like if I see something that is interesting, I'm like, oh, that can be a prop in a movie. Or I'll see something over here and say, oh, that'd be a neat story. What if this happened? And I'm sure as writers you do that all the time, but you level that up by taking two and putting them together and saying, well, here's this really interesting ghost town. There's this really interesting ghost town, and you're driving through, and you're like, that's cool. A couple miles down the road, you drive past something else. Maybe it's a gas station, and there's like an old rusty like gas or oil can robot that they've built. Okay, mix those two things together. What happens when this oil can robot has been left for so long and becomes sentient, like whatever you grabbed on your left from the last thing, and now it's wandered into this ghost town, and it doesn't realize that this ghost town isn't natural. This robot is living in this ghost town thinking that the world has ended because all the people that he saw drive by are gone, and this ghost town must be representative of the entire world. But it's not. It's just one small piece. But for this robot who has seen thousands of cars drive by, maybe now maybe the highway has moved, and that's why there's nobody there, kind of like a car. Radiator Springs, it was kind of forgotten because the highway moved. But now this little oil can robot is in this town, and he's very sad because humanity has died off, and he loved seeing these little kids on vacation and parents in their RVs, and just he loved seeing all these people, and now he's wandered into this ghost town and he thinks that humanity's gone. Boom, you've got a story. You can take any two unrelated objects that you see out in the world and put them together. That's where stories come from. Just start thinking about everything that you see, and you start, okay, here's an idea about this thing. That's a great starter, but you need something else, because guess what? Every other writer has driven by and seen that same thing that you saw and has an idea for it. And so if you want to really level it up and make sure that your idea is not the same, take something completely unrelated and put the two together. So always be looking for those things. Always be looking for little ideas that you can mash together like Lego blocks and create your story. So always be looking for inspiration. It doesn't have to be a thing either. It can be a person. You can meet a person that has a really interesting personality affectation that you're just like, that I want that in a story. How does that work in your story? You take this person's personality affectation, and then you see maybe you find out about an interesting job, a window washer. Okay, great. What if this person with this interesting personality trait was a window washer? What would happen in that scenario? It is easy. Just throw things together until something sparks your mind and say, this is the story I want to tell. Tip number 8. I haven't been paying attention to what fingers I'm holding up, or even really. I just realized that I was like, I better count this. Is this 8? But tip number 8 is how to overcome writer's block. Writer's block is bullshit. Story block is a thing. Yeah, you can get blocked on story all day. I will sit and stare at my computer monitor for hours trying to figure out where I went wrong, or how I can, this is where I want to get to, but I've already done this and this. That is that's what you think is writer's block, but it's not. It's story block. That you've gotten in your own way there. So my tip to getting past that is stop working on the thing that's blocking you right now. Because the block is just like this tiny little thing that is stopping you, impeding your progress from the story. So the reason it's impeding your process is because the story you want to tell is right here behind it. And so you either can go up, over it, go under it, whatever you've got to do to get past this little block to get to that part of the story is what you need to do. Now, sometimes that little block is a little bit bigger and it makes it very hard, and you're like, it's too big for me to tackle right now, and you just sit and you focus on it. So what if the story you were trying to tell wasn't sitting right on the other side of that block, but was instead over there? The block is here in front of you. So if I turn this way and focus my attention on a different scene or a different story altogether, that block isn't there. I can write about that. I can pick something stupid like picking whatever's to my left and write about that. It's not writer's block. You're not blocked. You as the writer are not blocked. The story is blocked. So do something else. Keep the wheels moving. Keep the engine running so that when you're ready to get back to it and you can get to this and that block is gone, because it will go, you're ready to jump back in and drive forward. So work on something else. Make up another story. Work on a scene later on down the road. Write whatever, and I do this sometimes. I'm not saying you have to do it, but what I enjoy sometimes is I'll be working on a scene, and if I have writer's block in that scene, like let's say Paisley Mott is working on something and I need for her to gather a piece of information, but I don't know how she's going to gather that piece of information. So she's running into this wall and I can't figure it out. So that's my block. But it's not a writer's block, it's a story block. So to figure out how Paisley's going to get that information, I'll think about other people in the story and what they're doing at that exact point. So there is, if you've read the book, there's a point where Paisley is doing some investigation in a library. And I was trying to figure out how she figures out the piece of information that she needs. When I couldn't figure out what to do, I started thinking about the other people in the story. And what is Boyd Gunnarsson, who's the librarian and the town historian, unofficial town historian, what is he doing while she's doing this? He's in the library with her. He's downstairs and she's upstairs. But what's he doing? And so I start writing this story about he's probably straightening books and he's probably cleaning off shelves and he's sitting behind the counter and he's flipping through and reading a book. Maybe he's organizing new boxes of books that he got. And when I started writing this little scene about what Boyd was doing, it's not in the book because it doesn't need to be, because it's not interesting. It doesn't move the story forward. But by thinking about what he was doing in that moment, it made it easier for me to get past that little story block. And I thought to myself, that's it. That's where Paisley can get this piece of information. Then all of a sudden, the block was gone and I could write past that. But because I kept the engine running and I kept things moving along in my head and I kept writing, because as you know, as a writer, writing is easy. Starting to write is nearly impossible. So if you stop because of that writer's block, you are letting that writer's block win. Number 9, write with music. Now, I know some of you might be like, but I can't write with music, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I know a lot of really good writers who have a hard time if there's any distraction whatsoever going, that they can't write. I personally prefer to write to music. Now, Stephen King will listen to like Metallica, or he likes heavy music while he's writing. I do sometimes. So what I'll do is each one of my characters has a playlist. Paisley's got a playlist that has just the stuff that I think Paisley would enjoy. But I'll go a little deeper and I'll say, what would Paisley enjoy at this moment? So there's a moment in The Hills Above the Gristmill where she's driving, and well, what music would Paisley be listening to right now? She could listen to anything in the world. What would she be listening to in this moment? And I will listen to that song or songs related to that. Or I'll just put together a general Paisley playlist. So I'll do that with each one of my characters. And then I will also just kind of throw in a bunch of different songs that I really enjoy that I think fit the feel of it, feel of the story. There's usually a couple of songs that I just really love that feel like the story to me. And so I will play that song over and over and over on a loop because I'm not listening to the song. That's not the idea. I just want the feel of the song. I want the familiarity of the song. Now, if you do that oftentimes, with me at least, when I hear the song, I'm like, oh, it's time to write. So it's great if I'm ready to write. If I'm, at work or driving or something and the song comes on, I'm like, oh, it's time to write. And now I have to either just not write or find a way. Writing finds a way. So if you can write with music, I suggest finding a playlist, letting it play, but try to fit it to the actions and the characters that you're writing about. Number 10, don't fear the first draft. We've mentioned this a couple of times. The first draft is junk. It is garbage. Don't lie to yourself and say that you're creating a masterpiece on your first shot. I know it feels like it, especially when it's the first time you've ever written something. The first time you write something, you feel like it's such a massive accomplishment that you want to share it with the world. But I would ask you to wait. I'm going to assume you have cooked things in your life. Remember that first time when you were a kid that you made toast and you burnt the shit out of it, but you were so proud that you made your toast, and maybe your parent slathered butter and jelly on it so that they could stomach this burnt piece of turd that you have created, but you were so proud that you provided sustenance? That's your first draft right now. Because you don't understand how great it is going to be. With enough burnt pieces of toast, you're going to get some good pieces of toast, and then you're going to start making your own bread, and then you're going to start making your own doughs, and that's going to turn into making your own pasta or your own pizzas, and soon you're going to have this entire world of skills that you can utilize to cook. But the first time you do it, you're not going to be good at it. And that is okay. Likewise, once you become an expert chef and you can cook now, the first time you try to create your own recipe, it's not going to be great. It might be good, but it's not going to be great. It's not going to be its final form. You're going to make it, you're going to taste it and be like, I should have put some creme fraiche in there. Let's zhuzh it up a little bit. And you're going to want to make it better. That's your first draft once you've written a bunch of stories. Once you're 6 novels deep, then that's where you're at. But that first one, yeah, you're still making that burnt toast. It happens. But you can take that burnt toast, and as long as you're willing to revise it over and over and over again and make that same piece of toast over and over and over again, you can get it to be the best piece of toast that toast could possibly be. That is your first book. Very rarely is it ever going to be a masterpiece. Now, there's people like Harper Lee that wrote their first book and it was amazing. Yeah, it happens. Stephen King's first book was Carrie, but it wasn't his first story. Dude had written hundreds, if not thousands, of short stories, and they had been published before that. He wrote a ton of novels before Carrie. Carrie was not his first novel. It was just the first novel that was published, because he understood that you can't just make it and expect it to be great. So don't sweat the first draft. It's going to be terrible. The faster you understand that it's going to be terrible, the better off you'll be, because then you won't be stressing every word. Like, if you think that it's a masterpiece, let's say you write 90,000 words and you think these 90,000 words are going to be a masterpiece, then every single word could be the thing that ruins that masterpiece. So you've got 90,000 words, you write the first word, that one word, if it's not perfect, ruins the other 89,999. Do you want that kind of stress while you're writing your first draft? No. First draft is just about getting the sand in the sandbox. It's gonna be garbage. Accept that it's garbage. I'm not calling you garbage. I'm not saying your writing is garbage. I'm saying the first draft of every single story is not as good as the last draft of every single story. So make sure that the first draft is not the last draft. Keep it, just throw every word you've got at it. And then put it away, come back and read it, and you will be like, this is garbage, but some of it is genius. And you'll be able to tell because that's your baby. So go through, and then second draft, it gets better. Third draft, it gets even better. Fourth draft, if you get that far, fourth draft, amazing. But that first draft, don't let it take you out of the game, because it will. Because if you think it's going to be great, and you're telling yourself, I don't have time to rewrite this, so I'm just going to make it great on the first shot. You ain't going to do it, buddy. It ain't happening. It ain't possible. I mean, anything's possible. But if you're playing with that kind of probability, imagine, and you're banking on it being perfect on the first shot, imagine your disappointment when it's not. Imagine thinking that you wrote the best book ever. You send it out to query, and no agent wants to touch it. Do you admit that it's not a masterpiece then? Or do you think that every agent is crazy? Then what? Then you self-publish and you get bad reviews? Do you admit that it's not a masterpiece then? Do you submit yourself to that kind of rejection over and over and over again? Or do you, in the confines of your own little office or whatever space you're writing your first draft in, do you accept that it's not perfect then and move forward? Because if you do it now with yourself, if you can accept it with yourself, it's going to be way easier down the road to make those changes. Don't sweat the first draft. Never sweat the first draft. That's it. Those are my 10 tips. I was like, oh, I'm going to make this short little 5-minute video and it's going to be great. And it's going to be so quick to edit because it's going to be so short. Well, when I talk about writing, I get passionate and I don't stick to the script. I just make things up as I go. In my little note app here, I have got the questions I wanted to ask myself. These are questions that have been asked to me by people that I mentor. So I figured I would answer them here. And I didn't have answers for them. I wasn't like, oh, this is what I'm going to say. Everything I just said, I just came up with, which is why this video is way longer than it needs to be, because I happen to ramble, because I'm very passionate about writing. I'm very passionate about storytellers. I'm very passionate about writers. So if it seems like I'm being harsh by like, your first draft is garbage, it's because I care about you and I want you to approach this with the best possibility of success. Because that's what this platform is about, right? Authors helping authors. I want you to succeed. And if you have a question about writing or a comment about one of my things, one of the tips that I just provided, comment down below and we'll talk about it, because I'm not saying I'm right. I've written one book. That's not true. I have published one book and I'm no expert. I don't know everything. But I have gotten to the point in my life where I feel comfortable about my writing. So these are steps that I've taken and tips that I've utilized to get myself to the point where I was okay sharing my work. So that's all I'm trying to do. Get you to the point where you feel confident enough to get the work done, because I want to read it. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed the video, drop a comment and a like. The old boop boop. Ring the little bell if you want to know when another video is coming. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks for being here.